Blood drops onto a beautiful flower, creating a frightening scene. Some people plead for help. A lady with an injured shoulder falls to the floor and hides. Footsteps approach from behind her. Tears stream down her face. A man with a half-monster head featuring sharp teeth comes into view. The lady puts her hand over her mouth to stifle her sobs. The man, searching for people to eat, suddenly notices a lady with another man. The man warns the lady to run as a zombie approaches. Out of nowhere, another zombie, a man with a big hand, punches the approaching zombie. The man behind the second zombie looks scared and sweaty as yet another zombie arrives and attacks him. The entire zombie horde is feasting on their victims, while a lady in a red shirt, visibly pregnant, struggles to run. Her shoulder, bitten by a zombie, causes her intense pain. The impending birth of her baby intensifies her agony, and she realizes she can no longer postpone the inevitable. She tears a piece of cloth from her injured shoulder, biting down hard to stifle her screams of pain. Clenching the fabric tightly, she prays fervently for the safety of her unborn baby. In the midst of the ongoing zombie onslaught, with civilians falling victim to the relentless attacks, she clings to hope and seeks divine intervention. Due to the zombie bite, the lady undergoes a transformation. Her hands and nails contort, changing shape as the zombification process takes hold. Her eyes gleam with an ominous red hue, and she bites down on the cloth with all her strength, both to muffle her pain and to resist succumbing completely to the zombie state. 7 years later, the entire town is overrun by zombies. In a house, a young girl cowers behind a cupboard, trembling in fear. She hears a noise, indicating someone or something is approaching. A mysterious figure with sharp teeth emerges, and the girl, sweating profusely, covers her mouth to stifle any sound. The zombie lady locates her, giving the child a terrifying gaze. The child runs as fast as she can, but the zombie catches her. The zombie lady opens her mouth, and the child trembles in fear, pleading with the zombie to stop. Surprisingly, the zombie lady is the child's actual mother. The child tells her mother to stop and let her go. It turns out they are playing hide and seek, and this is the same lady who was bitten by a zombie and gave birth. The child tells her mother that it's her turn to hide. The daughter's name is Chukbok. Chukbok pleads with her mother to let her go, saying she can't breathe. However, her mother refuses, emphasizing how precious her daughter is to her and expressing the sentiment of being a mother. But to be honest with you guys, this manhwa is going to be too emotional, so stick with us. Chukbok tells her mom that she wants to go with her, but her mother keeps refusing. She screams, grabs her clothes, and insists on accompanying her mother. Tears start rolling down her cheeks. However, her mother explains that there are too many monsters outside and she cannot let Chukbok go. Despite the initial resistance, Chukbok eventually calms down, understanding the gravity of the situation from the stern look her mother gives her. She apologized to her daughter, but assured her that she would bring back Gomdal. Chukbok asked her mom if she could return quickly, and her mom smiled. Outside the house, zombies crowded the area, and a long-necked creature emerged, attempting to attack Chukbok's mom. However, she skillfully dodged the creature and swiftly threw her needle into its back, rendering it paralyzed. She managed to eat the monsters, noting that the taste was weird, but at least she felt full. The lady observed 2 people shouting at the zombies, instructing them to stop. A young girl and a boy were seen. The young girl informed the boy that the zombies couldn't move if they pointed the light at them, so they shouldn't waste bullets. The boy expressed concern about the large number of zombies, but the young girl insisted they needed to hold out until morning. Chukbok's mother observed them and wondered why they were out so late, especially with such weak light. She also considered that the sounds of gunshots would only attract more monsters, making the situation more dangerous. She thought it was time to intervene. Lady Monster charged at them, and when the 2 people saw the monster approaching, fear gripped them. The boy instructed the girl to use the flashlight. Despite the girl turning on the flashlight, the lady monster couldn't be stopped. She kicked the boy and focused on the young girl. The girl bravely pointed her gun at the lady monster. telling her to go away. However, the lady monster, with glowing eyes, continued advancing toward the girl, and the exact outcome of their encounter remains unknown. Some time passes, and we see a guy who is worried about not having any supplies. Realizing he's in a tight spot, he clutches a stone in his hand, understanding that it won't be enough to survive. His best option is to find a place to hide. But before he could hide, the lady monster finds him and points her stinger at him. The man is terrified as the stinger is very close to his neck. They both stare at each other, and the lady monster moves forward to attack him. However, to their surprise, she hugs him and says, "Thank goodness it's you, honey." She mentions that she has found Gomdal. Gomdal tells his wife that he found his backpack and reassures her that it wasn't stolen. He asks her not to cry, and the wife suggests they go home. The scene shifts to the street where the same young girl is screaming at zombies to leave her alone. The zombies are approaching her, and she pleads that she doesn't want to die and begs them not to kill her. However, one zombie tells her to turn on the flashlight. The lady is sweating profusely, shouting at the zombies to go away. Suddenly, the movement of the zombies stops. The girl wonders why they all stopped. Did they understand her words, or does she have some kind of power? However, when the girl looks behind her, she sees a monstrous figure, and the monster proceeds to eat her. The scene shifts to another area where Gomdal is searching for useful items. Everything seems useless, but to his surprise, he finds a torch. He feels fortunate to have found the flashlight and wonders if he should go back. Going any deeper might lead him to encounter monsters. Contemplating whether to go deeper or not, he takes a look inside and laughs, realizing he didn't find anything. Despite that, he decides to go in, challenging his luck. Venturing deeper into the darkness with a torch in hand and a gun at the ready, he reminds himself to be cautious. He carefully searches for anything useful in the surroundings. As he ventures even deeper, he hears a sound, and upon investigation, he discovers a monster's body, visibly wounded and lying on the floor. Realizing that there might be another monster in the vicinity, he contemplates the dangers and decides it's best to retreat and head back. Undeterred by the darkness, he carefully explores the room where the wounded monster lies. The dim light from his torch reveals eerie surroundings, and he wonders what might be hidden in the shadows. The realization hits him like a thunderbolt. The monster in front of him is none other than his own wife, Chuckbok's mother. She is nurturing their child amidst the darkness, and Gomdal is both shocked and relieved to discover the truth. The room, once shrouded in fear, now holds a bittersweet revelation about the lengths a mother will go to protect and care for her offspring in this post-apocalyptic world. And they both defeat the monster and runs away, and now the lady is the beautiful wife of the man. The couple, now reunited, manages to defeat the monster and escape. The man suggests finding a hiding spot, and they run together. As they navigate through the desolate streets, the man uses a flashlight to divert the attention of zombies, allowing them to slip away. However, the growing number of zombies poses a threat, and their flashlight begins to flicker, leaving them vulnerable in the darkness. The man unholsters his gun and asks his wife if she can handle the situation. However, his wife expresses doubts, acknowledging that it won't be an easy task. The man tells his wife that they can't defeat all the zombies, but if they get rid of a few, they can escape. He starts shooting at the zombies, but suddenly a long tongue grabs his legs and pulls him away. His wife tries to catch his hand, and he holds onto her hand. With her other hand, she grabs a rod, attempting to pull her husband back. However, the man informs his wife that his legs are about to be ripped off. The man screams, questioning the origin of these tentacles, realizing they are in a dire situation. They both notice a zombie, a monstrous figure with tentacle-like appendages for hands, approaching them. We see Chuckbok drawing, expressing her desire to see Gomdal, her father, and play with him. Meanwhile, we shift to Gomdal being pulled by the monster, while his wife holds onto the rod tightly. The monster is eagerly waiting to consume them, and the lady is concerned about the overwhelming number of monsters. She wonders what they can do in this dire situation. As they struggle to hold on, unable to endure any longer, they decide to face their fate together. Tightening their grip on each other's hands, they prepare for the inevitable. The lady, unable to hold on to the rod any longer, lets it go, and they are both pulled closer to the monster. In a courageous move, the lady uses her stinger to attack a nearby bear zombie. She pulls it off and throws it into the monster's mouth. With quick thinking, she targets the monster's tongue with her stinger, forcing it to release the man's leg from its grasp. The lady realizes that their best chance is to get to the ground where they can have better control. As they fall, she manages to grapple her husband, but the relentless monster is still attempting to reach them. Swiftly dodging its attacks, they land on the ground together. The husband, carrying his wife, starts running, determined to escape the relentless pursuit of the monsters. The monster, frustrated and hungry, lets out a deafening scream as the couple escapes its clutches. The husband, understanding the gravity of the situation, accepts his wife's strength and determination. They continue running together, fueled by the shared goal of reaching safety for the sake of their daughter. The husband reassures his wife, telling her that he, Gamdal, is strong and capable of handling difficult situations. He encourages her not to worry, emphasizing their shared strength as a couple. Her wife curing at her, thinking, "I am the reason my husband gets injured," but suddenly the lady got stabbed by the monster. Her husband screamed in horror, realizing that the monster who had stabbed his wife was none other than the creature that sought to devour them. Gamdal, filled with concern, asked his wife if she was okay. With a reassuring smile, she replied that it was just a little scratch. Feeling the pain intensify, the wife informed her husband that it was starting to get on her nerves. Her husband urged her to hold on, assuring her that he had something that could help. He yelled, "Give me a little time." Meanwhile, the monster continued to chase his wife, but she swiftly dispatched them all. Meanwhile, her husband rummaged through her bag until he found it. He threw the grenade towards the zombies, and a huge blast ensued, killing all the zombies. Gamdal exclaimed, "What a shot! I'm so glad that it actually works." As they launched a barrage of grenades at the zombies, causing a massive explosion, one zombie remained standing, albeit without a hand. The big monster stomped on the lone zombie, rendering it helpless. With a hunger for flesh, the monster turned its attention towards the wife. Her husband, feeling the urgency of the situation, exclaimed, "What do we do now? There's only one left." He turned to his wife and asked if she had a plan. His wife leaped into action, dodging the monster's barrage of attacks with ease. As she skillfully evaded each strike, she clutched a bomb in her hands. Her husband, watching in concern, exclaimed, "What are you doing? You're too far away to make a hit." She hurled the bomb with precision, her husband watching in shock as it sailed through the air. Then, in a move reminiscent of Ronaldo taking a corner kick, she swiftly kicked a grenade into the monster's gaping mouth. The grenade detonated, causing a powerful blast that obliterated the monster. With a triumphant grin, she defiantly showed the monster a middle finger, reveling in her victory. Her husband cheered her on, expressing his admiration. "Nice, that's my wife. I love you so much." They quickly made their way towards their house, and her husband encouraged her to show him the wound. To their surprise, the wound had already begun to heal. Her wife jokingly grabbed her husband's hair, teasing him. "You're the one to be careful. My goodness, your cool hairstyle has just gotten a little messy." Her husband chuckled and suggested, "Let's go in. Our daughter must be waiting for us." They entered the house, and her father exclaimed, "We're home." Their daughter greeted them excitedly, showing off her completed homework. She exclaimed, "Look at this, I finished my homework, Gamdal is back." Father and daughter shared a tight hug, and her father asked affectionately, "Awa, sweetheart, did you have a good day?" She rubbed her cheeks against his and replied happily, "Yes, I was guarding our home. I did my homework." Her father lifted her up, impressed, and remarked, "Wow, you've finished it, well done." Their daughter then requested a gift, and her mother smiled from behind. Her father rummaged through his bag and pulled out a chocolate, delighting their daughter. They shared a warm hug, and the father teased, "You only call me daddy when I have something for you, don't you?" The daughter affectionately replied that he was the best daddy in the whole world. Her mother watched with a smile and remarked, I like Gom doll better. All right, do whatever you want, little rascal. No matter how difficult. I feel energized whenever I see that smile. Whatever happens, I will protect my dear family forever. She hugged her husband from behind, beaming with happiness. Meanwhile, outside their house, a new lady appeared, and inside, their daughter proudly showed off her accomplishments. She exclaimed, Mom, look at this. I did a great job, right? Her father asked if Mom also praised her for her excellent work. Then, feeling hungry, they all decided to eat something together, while the suspicious lady watched from outside. Chuck Bak was happily enjoying her meal, while her parents watched her with smiles. Her dad asked, Do you like the food? Chuck Bak nodded and replied, Yes, prompting her dad to ask, Really? Should I bring you another one next time? She affirmed eagerly. Then Chuck Bak took a spoonful of food and offered it to her father, saying, Have a bite, Gom doll. This is really good. Her dad chuckled and responded, Oh, are you giving your daddy a bite? He took the bite and expressed his enjoyment, saying, It tastes much better coming from you. Chuck Bak then offered a spoonful of food to her mom, who seemed hesitant to accept it, perhaps due to being a zombie. But Chuck Bak insisted, saying, I'll give you a bite, Mommy. Taste it. Her father chimed in, mentioning that Mommy had said she's full now. However, Chuck Bak insisted that her mom hadn't eaten anything, to which her dad replied that he had seen her eating something. With a cute look, Chuck Bak gazed at her mother and asked, But how do you eat food, Mommy? I've never seen Mommy eating food. Her mom smiled warmly, took her daughter's hand, and assured her, I'm full, sweetheart, so no need to worry. Then she encouraged Chuck Bak to enjoy her meal. Chuck Bak, curious about what her mom eats, finds a cookie and excitedly calls out, Mommy, this is a really delicious cookie. I brought my favorite snack for you. She approaches her mother, offering her the cookie and urging her to have a bite, insisting it's really yummy. However, her mom responds with an awkward smile, thanking her but reminding her gently, Thank you, but I told you Mommy can't eat those things. I'll accept your kind thoughts. Her daughter, with a cute smile on her face, leans in close to her mom, who is now emotional. Her mom, touched by her daughter's expression, mentions softly, I can't say no to that face. Ah well, I'll just take a bite. She tries to take the cookie, but her daughter quickly pulls it away, looking at the cookie angrily before breaking off a small piece and relaxing. She then gives her mom a piece of the cookie, urging her to enjoy it. Her mom smiles softly, but her daughter insists, forcing her to eat the cookie. Her mom gently refuses, saying, I'm okay. You can have it all. Her daughter, not wanting to disappoint her, happily takes 2 pieces. Chuck Bak is confused as she realizes something's wrong. No, this is not what I wanted. I wanted Mommy to eat it. Her dad comes and asks her daughter to give him a bite, but Chuck Bak is lost in her thoughts and eats the whole cookie, mentioning, Then I should try again with another one, which makes her dad nervous. She continues to try to feed her mom one by one with different products, but her mom can't control her anger anymore. She rages at her daughter, Stop bothering me, can't you? See, I'm cleaning the house. I told you I don't want to eat it, but why do you keep doing this? To me? Cut it out. Or are you enjoying bothering me? Chuck Bak, now scared and crying, mentions, I was worried about you. I have. Never seen you eating food, so I thought you must be hungry. So, I tried to share some food with you. Her mom grabs her hand and touches her finger, thinking while crying, I made her worry because I didn't tell her the truth, that she eats the monster, not the human food. She touches her daughter's finger again and mentions that truth is. Suddenly, her mom's eyes and face turn red as if she's observing something, and we see a nosebleed coming from Chuck Bak's nose. Chuck Bak asks her mother, What's wrong, mother? Her mom suddenly transforms into a monster, her teeth resembling those of a shark. However, her husband comes to the door of the room, having heard a noise. He mentions, I just heard the door slam. and opens the door. He asks his daughter where her mother is, to which she replies that her mom went out. Her father then asks about her nosebleed, which even her daughter doesn't know about. We shift to a street where a lady in a green suit is standing, and she turns around to reveal a monster fixed to her chest with sharp teeth. Suddenly, Chuckbox's mom appears out of nowhere and punches the monster in the chest, causing it to cough up blood. She delivers another powerful punch and declares, "I'm her mother. I have to protect my daughter. Wake up. I don't eat my family." Despite being a zombie herself, Chuckbox's mom struggles with conflicting thoughts. She admits, "It's so hard to resist that sweet smell. I love the smell of fresh and young meat. I want to eat her." However, she manages to stop herself from succumbing to these thoughts and falls to her knees, letting out a gut-wrenching scream. As time passes, the entire family is sleeping soundly in bed. Chuckbox's mom reflects on her recent struggle, realizing, "I never realized how sweet a child's blood could be. It was close. Let's always be aware. I should be extra careful in front of monsters." She then whispers a tender goodnight to Chuckbox, promising, "I'll protect you forever." Chuckbox, with one eye open, overhears her mom's words and decides she'll give something to her mommy tomorrow. The next day arrives, and Gomdal prepares to leave, assuring everyone he'll be back soon. He reminds his daughter not to wake mommy up during the day because she needs her sleep. Chuckbox agrees and bids her father goodbye, requesting a chocolate bar. With a smile, she sees him off and then smirks, thinking, "Good, I can go outside while mommy's sleeping." Dressed as a construction worker and armed with tools, Chuckbox ventures outside. She encounters a zombie statue, which she breaks and investigates. Suddenly, a masked man and a woman with long hair emerge, prompting Chuckbox to hide. After they pass, she continues her search, spraying something on the wall before moving on. As she scavenges, she comes across various items like a book, a bone, and a broken object, none of which she needs. However, her luck changes when she discovers 3 candies, exclaiming, "Chuckbox can also bring the bacon home. Yay, I found 3 candies. Finally, something useful." As Chuckbox thinks about her parents, she imagines her father expressing gratitude for finding the candies, saying, "Did you find these candies, Chuckbox? Thank you, sweetheart." She smiles at the thought, realizing that's exactly the response she wants from them. Determined, she decides not to tell them she found the candies outside. She plans to give one to her mother, another to Gomdal, and keep the last one for herself. Remembering Hira, she decides to give one candy to her and quickly runs off to find her. Unaware of the masked man and the lady behind her, Chuckbox continues on her way. The lady remarks on their luck, encountering a child unexpectedly. The masked man speculates that she's likely with her parents. With a knife in hand, he suggests they could demand a significant ransom for her. The lady raises the possibility of the child being abandoned or orphaned, to which the masked man responds that they would then take whatever she has. Chuckbox continues to run, unaware of the suspicious individuals following her. They discuss potential ways to profit from the child, considering her rarity in the current times. The lady suggests selling her to a cannibal tribe, envisioning a lucrative transaction. The masked man expresses shock at the idea of dealing with a tribe obsessed with consuming human flesh, but the girl confirms her belief that they would indeed be interested in purchasing the child. As Chuckbox takes a turn, the lady swiftly retrieves her bat while the masked man brandishes his knife. Determined to capture Chuckbox before anyone else does, the lady takes the lead. The man warns her about the risk of being caught, but she dismisses his concerns, confident in her abilities. She instructs him to bring Chuckbox to her without harming her. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to them, a white-haired lady with a sharp woodcutter emerges behind the masked man. Before he can utter another word, a slashing sound fills the air, and the lady turns to witness the white-haired lady swiftly dispatching the masked man. The lady with the baseball bat confronts the white-haired stranger, questioning her identity and motives. As they lock eyes, the tension between them escalates, with the baseball bat lady accusing the white-haired woman of being hostile. However, the white-haired woman remains silent, her gaze intense and focused. Suddenly, the baseball bat lady rushes forward to attack, but the white-haired woman effortlessly dodges her assault. The baseball bat lady, feeling triumphant, mocks her opponent. However, her victory is short-lived as the white-haired woman swiftly retaliates, swiftly slicing her neck. The baseball bat lady falls to the ground lifeless, while the white-haired woman gazes stoically at her fallen foe. Chuckbok cowers behind the wall, desperately covering her mouth to stifle any sound that might betray her presence. Fear grips her as she watches the scene unfold before her. Suddenly, the white-haired lady appears and locks eyes with Chuckbok, sending a shiver down her spine. Trapped and terrified, Chuckbok remains frozen, unsure of what to do next. The lady who found Chuckbok is none other than He-Ra, and Chuckbok is shocked to see her. He-Ra asks Chuckbok where she is just as a monster's hand appears and starts to crawl towards them. Suddenly, the monster's face emerges from the hand and lunges at them, but He-Ra swiftly kills it, leaving its head on the ground. The monster's body wiggles and then disappears from the hand. Though scared, Chuckbok listens as He-Ra advises her to always check before entering a dark place. He-Ra then asks Chuckbok why she's outside and where her mommy is. Chuckbok is nervous about how to respond, but He-Ra grabs her hand and they walk together. Chuckbok starts to cry, but He-Ra reassures her with a set of rules. He-Ra's rule, number 1. I must check if there's a monster before I go inside a dark place. And, number 2. I must carry a flashlight or a weapon. Next, number 3. I must not go to a place where I hear a noise. Good. Number 4. I must not follow strangers other than Mommy, Daddy, and He-Ra. And the last but most important rule is, Chuckbok responds, number 5. I must not go outside alone. Good! Then He-Ra said, but you didn't follow the rules, huh? Do what I say mean nothing to you? Where's your answer? This made Chuckbok angry, and He-Ra continued, I've been telling you this for almost a year. You must follow these rules until you become an adult. On top of that, you can be in big trouble if you get followed by bad people. Don't you ever do this again. Chuckbok squeezed He-Ra's hand and mentioned, I know. This area. Well, so nothing will happen. And I'm all grown up now, so it's okay to come outside. She shouted, I am grown enough to go outside, so you can stop, He-Ra. But He-Ra gave her a death stare, which shocked Chuckbok. She thought, she's angry, really angry, I'm scared. He-Ra then mentioned, you're all grown up now, so do whatever you want. This made Chuckbok shocked. He-Ra also mentioned, I'll even take you to a place where adults go. Chuckbok blushed and said, the place where adults go? Ha, and Chuckbok is going there too, He-Ra replied. I'll take you there if you want to go. Chuckbok happily affirmed. Chuckbok arrived at the place and she was happy, but she soon said, it's too dark here, I want to go home. This place is terrible. He-Ra, where are you? I'm not sure. Why are you not sure? Replied He-Ra. Stop playing with me, I'm scared. Chuckbok said. He-Ra replied, what? You said you wanted to come. Chuckbok said, it's because you told me about. He-Ra then said, you're all grown up now, so you're not scared, right? Monsters love dark places like this. But adults come here because they can find valuable things. That's why this place is always filled with bloody fights. Chuckbok moved and slipped on the floor, her hands now covered in blood. As He-Ra mentioned, an adult gets out of here alive. Which made Chuckbok scared. She ran, shouting, He-Ra, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Chuckbok doesn't want to be an adult anymore. Let me go home. Chuckbok was now scared, tears streaming down her face. What should I do? I can't see anything because it's too dark. What should I do? Did He-Ra really leave me alone here? That's too mean. Is this really a place adults go to get food? In a place full of monsters like this? She trembled and cried. He-Ra approached Chuckbok and said, it's scary, right? It's dark and stinky, and you want to go home. She paused, then continued, "This is where adults go. To be honest, adults are also scared to come here. But they have no choice if they want to survive." She sobbed, "Remember what you saw today and make sure that this doesn't happen again." Chukbok continued to cry, overwhelmed by fear and uncertainty. Hira extended her hand to Chukbok and said, "Let's go home." Chukbok hesitated and replied, "But, Hira, why? There are monsters here. But why aren't we harmed?" Hira reassured her, "Don't worry, they're just sleeping." As they moved, a group of monsters emerged from the ground while others remained asleep nearby. The next day came, and as they arrived home, Hira reassured Chukbok, "Don't worry, it's just monsters sleeping. I'll see you next time you come outside with your mom and dad." Chukbok thanked Hira, but then asked, "Hira, am I still not allowed to talk about you to my parents?" Hira replied, "I told you, it's a secret between us." Chukbok then invited Hira to sit for a moment, and as she sat down, Chukbok said, "I have something for you." She patted her hair and continued, "This is for making Chukbok cry. Don't do this again." She then gave her a candy, saying, "I found it myself. It's for you." Hira watches Chukbok leave and smiles, reflecting on the candy and the gesture from the child. She muses to herself, "She gave me a smack and a candy? That kid, she's stronger than I thought. She'll grow into a strong woman." Meanwhile, Chukbok tries to open the door to her home, but she notices something alarming. Her finger is turning purple. Shocked and confused, she wonders aloud, "What is this?" As time passes, Gomdal and his wife continue their search, scouring the area for any discoveries. His wife queries, "Did you find something here?" Gomdal shakes his head, replying, "No, there's nothing here." Suddenly, Gomdal spots something among the debris. He picks it up and examines it, realizing it's a red scarf. Turning to his wife, he smiles and drapes it around her shoulders, saying, "Oh, this looks great on you. I just found it, but it fits you perfectly." His wife blushes at the unexpected gesture, and they share a tender moment together amidst their search. Gomdal and his wife exchange puzzled looks as there's no response from Chukbok. Concerned, they start calling out for her, "Chukbok, Chukbok, where are you?" They scan the area, searching for any sign of their daughter, hoping she's nearby. Chukbok, in her yellow jacket, continues to search for useful items, but her efforts prove fruitless. Instead, she comes across Hira lying on the ground. Concerned, Chukbok asks if Hira is hurt, but Hira responds coldly, telling her to go away. Chukbok is puzzled by Hira's reaction, as Hira seems to have no recollection of who she is. Chukbok, concerned about Hira's appearance, offers her help, suggesting that she looks sick and that Chukbok can assist her. Hira, annoyed by Chukbok's persistence, tells her to go away, calling her a little girl and telling her to get lost. Confused by Hira's response, Chukbok asks what "get lost" means, indicating that she doesn't understand the phrase. Hira insists that Chukbok should return to her parents and stop bothering her. However, Chukbok persists, grabbing Hira's hands and pressing them, suggesting that it will make her warm. Hira, growing increasingly frustrated, tells Chukbok to leave her alone. The scene shifts to a horde of zombies approaching, emitting a strange mixture of greetings and growls. They seem to utter phrases like, "Hello," "Thank you," "Wish you luck," and "See you again," creating an eerie atmosphere with their unsettling behavior. Gomdal lets out a sigh of frustration, remarking on the unusual presence of the monsters in the streets during daylight. His wife concurs, stating that they have exhausted all options and this pharmacy is the last hope in the area. Gomdal suggests taking a break inside the pharmacy while they wait for the monsters to disperse outside. Her wife's response is filled with anxiety and guilt as she grapples with the situation. She refuses the idea of taking a break, unable to rest knowing the uncertainty surrounding Chukbok's condition. Trembling with worry, she questions what they can do and whether they can find a cure. Examining her own finger, she discovers it shares the same purple hue as Chuk-bok's, realizing that she might be responsible for her daughter's condition. Husband gently reassures her, urging her not to blame herself too harshly and expressing confidence that they will find a solution. However, her determination to help Chuk-bok quickly resurfaces and she refuses to rest, fearing that any delay will only increase her daughter's suffering. Despite his growing nervousness, her husband suggests putting a halt to their search for now. After taking a deep breath, Gom-dal expresses his frustration, acknowledging the futility of their search for medical supplies in other locations. He suggests going to Hope Village, where there might be a doctor who can help. However, he notes that they'll need to pay an entrance fee to enter the village. His wife, touching her finger and showing concern, asks if there's really a doctor in the village, to which he confirms, emphasizing that it's their last hope. Gom-dal, holding his head due to a headache, expresses his concern about the entrance fee for Hope Village, mentioning that they only accept something useful and worthy. He ponders where they can find such things, indicating the challenge they face in meeting the village's requirements for entry. Gom-dal is taken aback by the suggestion of Dungeon Village as a potential source for the entrance fee. He expresses his concerns about the dangers of such a place, emphasizing that it's a literal monster's nest. However, his wife remains determined, confident in her ability to handle the situation. She explains that the village was attacked by monsters, so the supplies there should still be intact. Assuring him that she can handle herself and that she's familiar with the route, she emphasizes the importance of avoiding confrontation with the dungeon's master. Despite his reservations, Gom-dal acknowledges her determination and reluctantly agrees to her plan. Gom-dal takes a moment to consider the situation before agreeing to his wife's plan. Recognizing that he may not be able to handle the risks involved, he decides to stay home with Chuk-bok. He expresses his concern for his wife's safety and prepares to equip her with necessary items for the journey. As they open the backpack to gather supplies, they are both stunned to discover their daughter sleeping inside the bag. They rub their eyes in disbelief, trying to confirm if what they're seeing is real. Chuk-bok wakes up coughing, finding her parents, one angry and the other concerned. Despite her cheerful greeting, her father admonishes her, reminding her of the dangers outside. He expresses his worry and fear for her safety, causing Chuk-bok to start crying. Her mother, torn between frustration and concern, tries to comfort her daughter, realizing that the situation is not entirely the child's fault. Her dad's frustration boils over as he questions Chuk-bok's trust in them, suggesting that if she doesn't, she might as well live alone. He vents his upset, mirroring his daughter's distress. Chuk-bok's mom intervenes, acknowledging the tension but urging her husband to return home with their daughter for the moment, emphasizing caution. Chuk-bok's mom begins to leave, but Chuk-bok, clinging to her clothes, pleads to go with her. Her mom shoots her a stern look, but her dad intervenes, firmly telling Chuk-bok to stop, recognizing the danger of where her mom is going and blaming himself for it. Chuk-bok's tears stream down her face as she pleads with her mom not to go and to return home together. However, her mom remains silent and leaves, prompting Chuk-bok's father to hold her tightly. He reassures her, acknowledging her concern and emphasizing his trust in her mom's strength and ability to return safely. Despite his reassurances, Chuk-bok continues to blame herself for her mom's departure. Chuk-bok's father, feeling unwell, asks her to wait for him for a moment while he tends to his stomach. He assures her that he will return soon, but Chuk-bok is filled with worry and uncertainty about the situation. As her father leaves, she clenches her fists, preparing herself for whatever may come and determined to take action if needed. Chuk-bok's mother is filled with regret and concern for her daughter as she navigates through the dangerous situation. She realizes she should have reassured Chuk-bok before leaving, but also feels she must teach her daughter the importance of her actions. Suddenly, she notices a box surrounded by the zombie crowd, which they mistakenly believe contains food. As the zombies attack the box, Chuk-bok's mother is horrified, but quickly intervenes to protect her daughter, pulling her out of harm's way as she cries in relief and fear. As the mother and daughter flee from the zombie crowd, the mother is exasperated by the relentless pursuit of the zombie. She wonders why the zombie keeps following her and where her husband is in this chaos. With concern and frustration mounting, she continues to navigate the dangerous situation, determined to keep her daughter safe. As the mother fights off the zombies, she begins to feel the strain of the ongoing battle. Despite her skill in combat, she knows that she can't keep this up indefinitely. With a sense of determination mixed with reluctance, she contemplates using a special ability or power, recognizing that it may be necessary in this dire situation. Meanwhile, Chukbok notices a significant change in the weather as the clouds start to disperse. She alerts her mother to the shifting sky, realizing that it could affect the zombies' strength. With renewed hope, they continue their escape, though Chukbok expresses concern about entering a building overrun by monsters. Chukbok's mother, wounded but still determined, faces off against the zombie that attacked her. Despite her injuries, she fiercely defends her daughter, ready to fight to the end to protect her. However, just as the situation seems dire, a mysterious figure appears and takes down the zombie with a well-aimed shot from behind. Surprised by the sudden intervention, Chukbok's mother looks around to see where the axe came from. Though puzzled by its appearance, she realizes that it's an opportunity to escape and get to safety. With the zombie crowd still in pursuit, she knows they need to reach the dungeon quickly to avoid further danger. With renewed determination, she leads Chukbok towards their destination, grateful for the unexpected help. Chukbok's father, having arrived just in time to save them, is met with a crowd of zombies. Frustrated with himself for leaving Chukbok alone, he curses his own mistake and the situation it has led to. However, he knows he must focus on the present danger and protect his family. As the man trembles with self-doubt, a hand reaches out to take the axe from him. "Chukbok," he stammered, turning back to see He-Ra behind him. Confusion etched across his face as he asked, "Who are you?" But before he could finish, He-Ra delivered a swift smack. In the next scene, Chukbok's mother held her hand tightly, her eyes filled with a mixture of worry and frustration. "Why did you follow me? When will you learn?" she exclaimed. "I told you it'd be dangerous. I asked you to stay with your daddy. You're not even feeling well. You know how much I worry about you. If you do this again, you'll be in big trouble." Chukbok, touching her mother's hand, spoke softly, "I was scared, and I don't want to see you get hurt. I'm scared." Her mother, taken aback by her daughter's admission, softened her expression, realizing the depth of Chukbok's concern. Chukbok's heartfelt words brought tears to her mother's eyes as she hugged her tightly. "You little fool, what a high-maintenance child you are," she said with a mixture of amusement and affection, stroking Chukbok's hair gently. With Chukbok safely tucked under her shirt, her mother braced herself to face the oncoming horde of zombies. Despite the perilous situation, she was determined to protect her daughter at all costs. "Hang tight, Chukbok," she reassured her as they made their way through the crowd, navigating carefully towards the exit. With caution, she proceeded, keen on avoiding any unwanted encounters with the zombies. Taking another step, she reminded herself to walk as carefully as possible, mindful of her surroundings. Suddenly, a monster with long hair and sharp teeth appeared behind her, sniffing the air. The woman understood that she needed to remain still. "I must not provoke it," she thought. "If I make a move here, Chukbok will be in great danger." The monster's hair covered the woman, but she knew that to survive, she must not react. But after a long check, she couldn't hold on any longer. "All right, it's loosening up. I must get out of here as soon as possible. I can't." Before she could finish, the monster interrupted her with a disdainful remark. Startled, she looked behind to see no one there. Where did it go? And when? What was that? How can it disappear in such a short time? What on earth was it? She was left bewildered by the sudden disappearance of the creature. "No, I should calm down. It's already gone, so I must focus on getting out of here." Suddenly, a big hand emerged from nowhere, shocking the lady. The hand began grabbing every zombie in sight, leaving her wondering, what just happened? That huge arm, It's the master of the dungeon. Damn, it's difficult to move because of these monsters. I must get out of here quickly. The hand of the master began killing every zombie one by one. Despite being caught by zombie hands, Chuck Bach had fallen to the ground crying. Her mother shouted at her to run away, and she instantly started running. The monster squeezed the lady, and despite her attempts to escape, she couldn't break free. Focus. I'll focus all my power. To my hands. The red nails emerged from her hand, and she slashed at the monster's grip. The monster recoiled, throwing all the zombies to the ground. She started to run, urgently saying, "Hurry, I have to find Chuck Bach right away. Wait for me, Chuck Bach. Mommy is coming for you. Please be safe." We see the foot of a lady and a baby zombie on the ground, with a lady in a red suit behind them, calling out, "My little baby, where are you?" Her eyes glow as Chuck Bach runs from the zombies. She slips, but before the zombie can attack her, someone grabs the zombie, another zombie, and cracks its face. The floor is covered in blood, and Chuck Bach is crying as a horde of zombies approaches. A long-headed monster is ready to devour Chuck Bach, grabbing her as she cries out for her mother. Suddenly, a voice reaches the zombies' ears, causing them all to flee. Chuck Bach is left confused, wondering what just happened. She covered her nose, wrinkling it in disgust. Gross. This smells really bad. What is this? It smells weird. Suddenly, she was pushed from behind and fell to the floor, her candies scattering around her. To her surprise, a little zombie kid with red eyes and long hands was coming towards her, telling her to play with him. Chuck Bach tried to pick up her candies, but the zombie kid snatched one. Chuck Bach shouted at the kid, "Give back my mommy and daddy's candies. I found them myself." The kid sniffed the candies and ate one. Chuck Bach was stunned to see this and exclaimed, "Those were the gifts for my mom and dad." She dashed toward the zombie kid and punched him on the face, then pinched his cheeks, saying, "Give my candies back, spit them out." The zombie also pinched her cheeks, and they both started the fight. Chuck Bach insisted, "Those candies. For my mom and dad, give me." After a fierce struggle, Chuck Bach emerged victorious as the zombie boy ran away. She retrieved her candies, triumphantly declaring, "You can never mess around with me. These belong to my mom and dad." The whole crowd of zombies now rushed towards Chuck Bach, but suddenly they all ran away. Chuck Bach's wife wrinkled her face and sniffed the air, realizing that the zombies had fled because of a bad smell. Relieved, she thought that now there was nothing to be afraid of. Determined, she exclaimed, "Let's find Mommy. Wait for me, Mommy. Chuck Bach is coming." Suddenly, someone grabbed Chuck Bach from behind and mentioned, "I got it, Key Gin." Startled, Chuck Bach turned to see a woman and a monster. The monster declared that Chuck Bach was human, but she looked delicious. The monster remarked that Chuck Bach probably had close contact with the kid, admiring how soft her cheek was. Chuck Bach felt a sense of panic, wondering what she should do. The monster then decided that they should take Chuck Bach. The woman agreed, expressing her fondness for Chuck Bach's softness. Chuck Bach, feeling the monster's grip on her cheek, pleaded to be allowed to find her mommy. The monster woman responded sarcastically, saying she had no choice but to be Chuck Bach's mommy now. Chuck Bach firmly declined, saying, "No, thank you." The monstrous ladies argued about what to do with Chuck Bach. One insisted they should give her to their father to aid in their plan to devour the master of the dungeon. Another countered, asserting her claim to the girl and suggesting they should eat her themselves. Chuck Bach, terrified by their conversation, realized she needed to find a way to escape from their clutches and reunite with her mother. The scene filled Chuck Bach with dread as she realized the monstrous ladies intended to consume her. Trembling with fear, she desperately longed to be reunited with her mother. Clutching her clothes tightly, she resolved to muster all her courage and do whatever it took to escape from their grasp. Chuck Bach, desperate to escape, addressed the monstrous women as "Mommy" and fled from them. The monster lady remarked on Chuck Bach's agility for her age, finding her fear endearing. As Chuck Bach ran, the monsters pursued her relentlessly. However, another monster followed behind, slashing through the zombies in their path to clear a way for Chuckbok's escape. Chuckbok, feeling the urgency to find her mother quickly, darted away from the monsters, knowing she was in grave danger. The monstrous lady couldn't allow her to escape and hurled her paws at Chuckbok. However, Chuckbok swiftly dodged the attack, causing it to inadvertently strike a nearby monster, killing it instantly. Seizing the opportunity, Chuckbok fled further away from the pursuing monsters. Hiding behind the wall, trembling with fear, Chuckbok called out for Hira, her dad, and her mom, expressing how much she missed them. Suddenly, a monster appeared, telling Chuckbok not to worry, claiming that they were her family. With a chilling tone, the monster declared that their game of hide and seek was over and beckoned Chuckbok to come closer. Tears streaming down her face, Chuckbok cried out, refusing to comply, expressing her desperate desire to go home. Chuckbok's fingers underwent a transformation, and she shot out a stream of energy from her hand, striking the monster and causing it great pain. The monster, shocked and bewildered by the attack, felt a searing sensation in its hand, which began to burn fiercely. Confused and in agony, the monster wondered what the girl had done to him. Meanwhile, Chuckbok's nails started to grow, with red veins coursing through them and sharp, black claws emerging. The zombie girl, lost and worried, contemplates her situation, pondering the whereabouts of Ki-gun and lamenting that he might be indulging in the girl without her. She desires the first bite, reminiscing about the softness of the girl's skin and craving another taste. As she continues to fantasize about consuming the girl, Chuckbok's mother places a hand on her shoulder, prompting her to turn around and inquire about her identity. In the scene, the monster man confronts Chuckbok, furious about what she has done. Chuckbok defends herself, explaining that she didn't mean to harm him intentionally. However, before the monster can attack her, his hand is suddenly cut off, causing him intense pain. He curses and threatens Chuckbok, vowing revenge for his injured arm and warning that he'll devour her alive or suffer the consequences of an upset stomach. The monster, filled with rage, threatens Chuckbok, declaring that he will chew her body until no bones are left, sending her into a terrified panic. As the monster attempts to strike Chuckbok again, someone intervenes, hitting the monster and sending him crashing into the wall. Chuckbok is shocked to see her dad's bag and her father approaching with glowing eyes and full of rage. Her dad, filled with anger, holds Chuckbok tightly, asking if she's all right, his voice trembling with concern. Chuckbok, still in tears, embraces her father and sobs, feeling relieved to be in his arms. He apologizes for the ordeal she endured and notices a peculiar smell along with the changes to her finger. Concerned, he asks her what happened, but Chuckbok, overwhelmed by fear and emotion, simply cries and recounts how her mom was caught by a giant hand. Her dad gently pats her head, reassuring her that it's all right and she doesn't need to explain everything just yet. The monster, enraged and confused, rises to its feet, demanding to know what's happening and who they think they are. Chuckbok's dad instructs her to stand behind him, assuring her they'll find mommy together once things settle down. Chuckbok nods in agreement, her father promising that they'll return home after finding her mom, even suggesting they'll have cookies when they get back. The monster continues to threaten them, asking if they're even listening. The monster, in a fit of rage, is suddenly struck in the face by a brick thrown by Gomdal. Chuckbok and her dad take cover behind her. Her dad then admonishes the monster, telling it to stop swearing in front of his child as it's not suitable for her education. The monster, enraged and determined to attack, pushes towards them, threatening to kill them. Gomdal throws another brick, but the monster swiftly crushes it. To the monster's surprise, a huge number of bricks are then sent towards him, hitting him repeatedly. He wonders where they came from and how someone could send such a large quantity of bricks with one hand. Gomdal grabs more bricks and sends them towards the monster, aiming to hit him with all his strength. He knows he must accurately target the vital points and strike faster and stronger to defeat the monster. However, to his surprise, the monster manages to block all the bricks, leaving him shocked and bewildered. Gomdal sees there are no more bricks left, and the monster grabs him by the neck, holding his daughter trembling in fear. Despite his attempts to escape, the monster's grip tightens. The monster taunts him, mocking the ineffective use of the stones and boasting about his ability to heal. He threatens to savor their bodies when he consumes them. Gomdal resigns himself to his fate, telling the monster to go ahead and kill him. However, suddenly Hira appears, wielding a sharp axe, and cuts off the monster's hand. The monster is shocked and demands to know who she is. Hira, undeterred, warns the monster that he's in trouble and to prepare himself. Hira continues to slash at the monster, each strike inflicting significant damage. Chukbok and her father huddle together, astonished by Hira's prowess. Gomdal marvels at how she's managing to overpower the monster with just an axe. He wonders how she maintains such strength even after engaging in such a brutal battle. As Hira relentlessly attacks the monster, Gomdal can't help but question who this woman really is. As Hira continues slashing at the monster, the creature's mind drifts back to a conversation from the past. The monster ponders what sets monsters apart from humans, reflecting on their respective strengths and weaknesses. The monster recalls a discussion with another monster, where they debated the differences between humans and monsters. The other monster suggests that humans may be more cunning and adaptable, but ultimately weaker than monsters who rely on brute strength and instinct. The conversation leaves the monster contemplating the unique traits of both humans and monsters, wondering where they fit into this dichotomy. The monster, now in a state of heightened determination, reaffirms their belief in the superiority of their cannibal tribe. They see themselves as a unique blend of human intelligence and monster strength, making them the ideal species for survival in their harsh world. Acknowledging their responsibility as a member of the tribe, the monster instructs their offspring to search for the child while they deal with the dungeon monster. They emphasize the importance of tapping into maternal instinct to locate the child easily, confident in their ability to capture their prey. As the one-eyed monster confronts them, Gomdal warns Hira of the danger lurking behind. Hira, quick on her feet, evades the monster's attack and retaliates with a swift slash. However, the monster remains defiant, boasting of being the chosen one and proclaiming that their adversaries will meet their end. Undeterred, the monster charges at Hira, vowing to rend her body asunder. Hira, maintaining her focus amidst the chaos, deftly sidesteps the onslaught, preparing to counter the relentless assault. In the midst of the struggle, the monster facing Chukbok's mother begins to realize something unsettling. Observing the fierce determination in her eyes, it dawns upon the monster that she shares a resemblance with their own kind, particularly with their father. However, the revelation only serves to fuel the monster's determination, recognizing the strength within Chukbok's mother. With a heavy blow landing squarely on her face, the monster is propelled into a state of rage, eager to test the extent of Chukbok's mother's abilities. The confrontation intensifies as Chukbok's mother swiftly counters the monster's assault, swiftly evading each attack with agility and precision. Undeterred, the monster increases the ferocity of her strikes, determined to land a decisive blow. However, Chukbok's mother remains resolute, skillfully dodging each attack with grace and determination. Caught off guard by her opponent's agility and skill, the monster is left stunned by Chukbok's mother's resilience and prowess in battle. Despite the relentless onslaught, she continues to evade the attacks, her focus unwavering as she presses forward in pursuit of her daughter. Chukbok's mother, realizing the severity of her situation, grapples with the realization that conventional methods won't suffice against her formidable opponent. As she confronts the daunting prospect of her injuries worsening, she makes a difficult decision to resort to her last option. With determination and resolve, she faces the monstrous adversary head-on, determined to find her daughter before it's too late. However, her efforts are thwarted as the lady monster employs a cunning tactic, throwing blood into her eyes to impair her vision. Despite the setback, Chukbok's mother remains steadfast in her resolve, recognizing the urgency of her mission. Determined to seek aid from Ki-gun, she resolves to find him and enlist his help in their battle against the formidable foe. Meanwhile, Ki-gun finds himself in a dire situation, locked in a fierce struggle against Hee-ra. Da-yeon keeps running away from Chuk-bok's mother with blood spilling with every step she takes. She yells for Ki-gun, asking where he is. Unfortunately, she gets no answer. The only thing she hears is a growl behind her, and tears gather in her eyes because of this. A voice from behind asks where she thinks she's going, and it turns out to be Chuk-bok's mother running towards her prey at full speed. Her jaws open as she growls one more time, yelling at her prey to return her daughter. On the other hand, Ki-gun can barely keep up. All his tentacles are now slashed, and he takes heavy breaths as he's bleeding out. He wonders what his opponent is. His eyes tell him that she's just a human, but he's finding it hard to believe. He stares at her axe, which is still dripping with his blood, and then at his pursuer. He still can't believe that he's the one getting beaten up like this. Hee-ra quips that Ki-gun looks confused and is wondering how a human that is far weaker than a monster can be stronger than him. She then urges him not to think too hard about it and admits that the truth is that he's simply weaker than her. She pulls close to an injured Ki-gun and raises her axe only to bring it down on him with full force. It makes a squelching noise that can't help but pull a reaction out of Gomdal. It turns out that the lady missed and the noise had come from Ki-gun stabbing himself with his tentacles. As more blood drips to the ground, he admits that it is much better than being killed by her. He considers this to be a much more honorable death and promises that Hee-ra will regret it. His eyes begin to close, but he keeps talking about how his father will never let her live. A low growl then escapes his lips as Ki-gun kicks the bucket. Standing near his corpse, Gomdal wonders what he meant by father, only for them to see Da-yeon breathing heavily in the distance. She calls for Ki-gun, but he doesn't answer, seeing as he's dead. This makes her angrier, and she calls them bastards as she asks what they've done. She doesn't even get to react before Chuk-bok's mother slashes her in the back, making her scream in pain. The woman declares that she has finally caught Da-yeon and repeats her request for her daughter as she stands over the monster's body. Chuk-bok glances at her from Gomdal's arms and immediately smiles as she sees her mom. Even Gomdal calls her attention. Their smiles turn into questioning looks as the Hee-ra charges towards Chuk-bok's mother. They both yell at her to stop, but she just keeps going. The woman is confused. She wonders who the hunter charging toward her is and whether she's connected to the monster she was chasing. In no time, Hee-ra slashes her axe at Chuk-bok's mother, and in turn, she uses one of her tentacles to defend herself. Gomdal yells at her to stop yet again, and this time he grabs both her hands, telling her not to dream of touching his wife. The hunter keeps stewing, but all Gomdal wants is for her to lure him out. She doesn't give it a rest and continues struggling as she tells him to let go of her. The half-monster just stands by, yelling and asking Gomdal why he would come to such a place knowing how dangerous it is. She also adds the fact that there are countless monsters. He smiles and declares that he must come to save his family whenever they're in danger. Hee-ra refuses to stop struggling, so Gomdal continues yelling at her to relax. She repeats that he should get off her, and Gomdal finally lets her go. The half-monster then asks where Chuk-bok is, calling her her little girl. She's filled with regret for not protecting her and wonders what she will do if something happens to the child. She grabs her head with both hands and begins to panic, only for Gomdal to tell her to calm down. Before he's done talking, Chuk-bok screams for her mommy, bringing a smile to the half-monster's face. The little girl calls out her name one more time and runs towards her mother with arms open. She claims that she did her best to run away from the bad guys and asks if her mother got hurt. The woman gets so emotional that she bursts into tears at the sight of her kid. She gets on her knees and they embrace each other. She holds her daughter like she would break anytime soon and begins to apologize for losing her in the first place. She strokes the little girl's hair as she promises never to lose her again. She then commends her for hiding. As they share their hug, Gam-dal gets emotional, but not Hee-ra, the hunter lady. Chuk-bok thanks her for helping her family, but all the hunter notices is the little girl's finger mutating into that of a monster. She frowns deeply, gritting her teeth in an attempt to bite back her words. It doesn't work, so Hee-ra yells that everything is ridiculous. Gam-dal asks what is, and the half-monster turns to give the hunter a questioning look. Hee-ra then lashes out at them for bringing their daughter to such a dangerous place. She claims that it's their duty to keep her safe as her parents, but they put her in harm's way instead. Hee-ra then references the events of that evening and blames it on their careless behavior. Apparently, they didn't notice the change in Chuk-bok's finger, and she asks what kind of mother would do that. The veins on her head spread till they get beneath her eyes, and her anger increases alongside this. To round up, she calls Chuk-bok's mother a monster and concludes that she can't know about such things because of what she is. Chuk-bok tries to call out the hunter's name, but her father takes the wheel. He starts by appreciating Hee-ra for her help and then tells her that she's taking things too far. He yells that everything was his fault to begin with and asks why she is taking it out on his wife. Said wife interrupts him, signaling with her hand for him to stop. He asks her why, but the half-monster stays quiet and stares down at her daughter. She then takes Gam-dal's palm and strokes it with her finger. He asks if she's trying to say something and interprets her signs for Hee-ra. The mother thanks the lady hunter for saving her daughter's life and accepts the blame for what happened. She would also like Hee-ra to know that they'll head to Hope Village for Chuk-bok's treatment after they get some supplies. She admits that she has nothing to give the hunter at the moment and promises to repay the kindness in future. She rounds up by asking for the hunter's name, and she admits that her name is Hee-ra Lee and that she's a friend of Chuk-bok. Both parents are surprised to hear that she's Chuk-bok's friend, seeing as Hee-ra looks too old for that. Gam-dal gives her a suspicious look before asking Chuk-bok if it's true. The little girl immediately confirms it and goes to hug Hee-ra's leg. Gam-dal then calls her a little troublemaker and scolds her for keeping it a secret from them. Their daughter apologizes and blames Hee-ra for instructing her not to let her parents know about their friendship. She then defends the hunter, letting her parents know that she is not a bad person and smiles as she admits that Hee-ra is actually nice to her. Gam-dal scolds her again, asking how she could say such a thing. The little girl is confused as he asks if her walking alone isn't enough already. Hee-ra comes to her rescue and tells Gam-dal to stop it. She accepts that it was her fault for telling the girl to keep their friendship a secret and adds that it doesn't matter because nothing bad has happened because of it. She overhears some growls in the distance and announces that there are fewer monsters in the dungeon only because it's farther from the center. The bottom line remains that it still isn't safe enough for a child. Hee-ra then tells them to find some supplies if they have time to chit-chat and begins to walk away. Little Chuk-bok runs after her, yelling that the hunter should wait for her. Her mother stews quietly as she notices the axe in the hunter's hand. She soon realizes that it was Hee-ra who helped her against one of the monsters in the past. She quickly signs on Gam-dal's palm and makes him ask Hee-ra to answer one more question. With a frown still on her face, she stops walking and turns to hear what they have to ask. They both stare at the hunter as Gam-dal asks who she is yet again. Hee-ra just repeats that she's Chuk-bok's friend, and the little girl happily hugs her. She then asks the couple to stop wasting time and show her the way out. Gam-dal gives it a rest for the meantime and gets his wife to agree too. They begin to walk, but they don't notice the throbbing hand of a monster in the distance. They go deeper into the dungeon where they find boxes of supplies heaped up. Unfortunately, a monster holding a bottle tries to charge towards them. Things end swiftly for it as Chuk-bok's mother cuts its head into two. They pass by multiple monster corpses as Hee-ra confirms if they're in the place with the supplies. Gam-dal, on the other hand, is busy searching through some boxes with Chuk-bok's help. He yelps in surprise as he and his daughter are marveled by the quality of food that they find. Their mouths begin to water and they can't help but announce it. Tears of joy stain Gomdal's eyes as he packs the supplies into his backpack. He admits that they can now pay for Chuckbok's treatment and that all they have to do is go to the village. Chuckbok is particularly pumped because she sees so many chocolate bars and her dad tells her to take as many as she wants. The little girl celebrates as she shoots him a smile with incomplete teeth. Meanwhile, her mother and Hee-ra glare at each other from the sides of their eyes. Her mom is suspicious. She doesn't think Hee-ra is sticking around just because she's Chuckbok's friend. She concludes that she's not ordinary either, judging by the way she handles monsters. Chuckbok brings the hunter a chocolate bar and she kneels to collect it. Her mother is now sure of one thing, and that is the fact that Chuckbok is alive because of Hee-ra. This doesn't get rid of the uneasy feeling she has towards her though. She's unable to shake off her suspicion and so continues to glare at the hunter as she plays with her daughter. The monsters around the warehouse mindlessly walk away and Chuckbok's mother peeks to confirm that they're all gone before signaling the others. All four of them walk in a straight file and Gomdal tells his daughter that she must be quiet. From underneath his sweater, she says okay and grabs him tighter. The half-monster gets a strange feeling and her eyes scan the area for danger. She suddenly comes to a halt, making Gomdal ask what the problem is. She frowns as she hears a whirring sound. The sound seems to draw closer to them until mighty hands accompany it. She quickly pushes Gomdal, trying to instill a sense of urgency in the man, but it's too late. They begin to run, but the hands are now too close to them. Gomdal yells that the monster is coming in too fast and Chuckbok screams for her life. He then screams, warning Hee-ra to wait because there are also monsters in the direction they're running. True to his words, a multitude of them mindlessly growl as they call them food. Things pick up pace when the monsters notice the mighty hands already pursuing their intended prey. They begin to run in the opposite direction and Hee-ra yells that the way is now clear. Unfortunately, she also points out that they have arrived at a crossroads. The lesser monsters run in both directions, but Gomdal and the crew are confused on which way to take. The mighty hand goes over their heads and picks off the lesser monsters. Gomdal then yells that the right side is blocked only for Hee-ra to let out a sound of frustration. She begins to think and soon concludes that the huge monster blocked off the right side on purpose. Chuckbok's mother thinks of this monster as the dungeon master, and she figures out that he's trying to fool them. The only thing left to do is get out of the dungeon as soon as possible. Three eyes glow red in the darkness as they come closer to where the crew is. They continue to scamper forward and Gomdal yells in hope that they are on the right path to the exit. They run as fast as they can, leaving the dungeon master to carelessly approach them, hitting every corner of the hallway as his mighty hands try to catch them. Luckily, he misses them again. The downside is that they arrive at a dead end packed with monsters. They all turn to face the dungeon master at the same time, and the light reveals a lady with legs embedded inside a monstrous head with 3 eyes and huge hands. The monster continues to squirm and drool as he sizes up the 3 of them. His eyes meet Gomdal, but he's not the one he's searching for. Up next is Hee-ra, but she's also not the prey he wants. Finally, he settles on Chuckbok's mother, who stares back with all the fury she can muster. Her yellow eyes stand out to the dungeon master, and he grins as he declares that he has found his prey. Ki-gun's father had been incapacitated until he found a suitable body to serve as his host. He let out a small scream as he adjusted to his new body and confessed that it's better than he thought. He cracked all the bones in it into place as he savored all the nutrients. He then admitted that he won't be needing another body for a while. After that, he began his search for his children and took step after step until he stumbled upon Da-yeon's tentacle. He wondered what they were trying to do and followed the trail of blood till he revealed Ki-gun's corpse. He then cursed under his breath and promised to kill everyone who was involved. Da-yeon shook with the little life she had left in her, and her father stood over her body as he asked who was responsible. Da-yeon was nothing if not surprised and tried to see who was talking through the side of her eye. Her father made it easy and grabbed her by the face as the words Dungeon Master barely made it out of her mouth. He admitted to knowing she was surprised, but he didn't care about that. All he wanted was answers, so he proceeded to ask Daeyeon the name of the one who left her in such a critical condition. With drool dripping from her mouth, she stuttered that it was a monster who had the same eyes as her father. Back to the present, and the Dungeon Master expresses his satisfaction for finally finding the monster with yellow eyes. As she stares back, Gomdal asks if she knows the monster, and Chukbok's mother says she doesn't. She begins to recall the last time she had seen the monster and remembers that it couldn't speak back then. The only thing that had changed was the lump on its chest, so she blames it for all the changes the monster underwent. Somehow it seemed familiar to this woman, and she wonders if it's because they share the same eye color. Either way, she has no idea who it is. The Dungeon Master hits the ground with his leg, asking if Chukbok's mom knows what he had to go through to find her. He never expected her to be that close though, and declares that it's about time she returned the body she stole from him. A nervous Gomdal interrupts to ask her how she managed to steal something from the Dungeon Master, and she growls at him, meaning she has no idea what the monster is talking about. He asks if she doesn't recognize him and later admits that it would be difficult to recognize him because of how he now looks. The Dungeon Master quips that it doesn't matter if she remembers or not, seeing as he will kill her and take his body back. Ra clenches her axe in preparation and tells Gomdal to focus on keeping Chukbok safe. He asks if she's going up against the Dungeon Master, but she tells him to stop disturbing her and just stand behind. Ra claims that she'll handle the situation no matter what, but Chukbok's mom blocks her path. She and Gomdal then ask what she thinks she's doing, but she keeps them quiet. In her heart, she already resolves to at least stop the monster if she cannot kill it. She exposes her fangs as she beckons on her last resort, admitting that it may bring her pain, but she has no choice but to use it. Her bones begin to crack as her claws turn red. Soon enough, a tentacle bursts out from behind her head with a red sharp edge, all while she growls in pain. She makes up her mind to hold it in no matter how much it hurts. Chukbok peeks from her father's jacket and overhears him ask if his wife plans to use her tentacles while fighting. She bolts into action without giving him an answer, and he yells for her to be careful. All that's on her mind is stopping the monster. Meanwhile, Gomdal notices that the other zombies are beginning to growl and come closer to them. In annoyance, Ra raises her axe and charges towards them. The tip of the half-monster's tentacle crackles with red energy, and the Dungeon Master confirms that she had the weapon. He then declares that he's going to get it back and sends his mighty hands flying towards her. She just as quickly slashes the hands multiple times, making them bleed and fall to the ground. His body begins to throb with anger, and he asks her again if she knows what he went through to get his current body. He's mad because she had the audacity to destroy his hands. Said hands lay pointlessly on the floor, and the Dungeon Master admits to himself that he can't use them because they've been paralyzed. Chukbok's mom sees this as an opportunity and dives towards the wailing monster with the intention to finish things quickly. Unfortunately, her leg gets caught mid-air by the Dungeon Master's tongue. She glances down at it, and Gomdal asks from a distance if it's a tongue. Her leg being tied up doesn't stop her as she tries to swipe at the monster. He just smiles maniacally and asks her how she rates his acting skills. He then thanks her for coming so far to greet him and even says she's thoughtful. She tries to attack him using her tentacle, but he's faster, so he takes her higher into the air. Gomdal can already tell what's going to happen. He yells at the Dungeon Master to stop it, and little Chukbok just screams helplessly. Before her eyes, the monster whips her mother against the concrete with a great force. Chukbok screams her mother's name as she crashes into the floor and cracks her skull. The whole place dissolves into a memory, and she wonders if she's running. She looks at her hands, and they seem like those of a human. She continues running, breathing heavily as she wonders where she's going. All of a sudden, she hears a splat and concludes that something had happened. She finds herself in tears and back to how she was when Chukbok was still in her stomach. The only difference is that this time, multiple tentacles came out the back of her head. This confuses her all the more, and she asks what is happening. The point of view changes, and we see what happens on the outside after the dungeon master slams the woman against the concrete. She coughs up an unhealthy amount of blood and her skull cracks. As Chukbok calls for her mother, the monster mocks the woman, asking if that's all she got using his power. He wriggles his huge arms back to health and announces his disappointment. He then asks if she thought a filthy little creature like herself could fight against him. Weakened, the woman growls on the floor, and the dungeon master tells her to blame herself for getting carried away by her power. Chukbok can't take it anymore. She frowns with conviction and unzips her father's sweater. She then jumps out and runs towards the monster, yelling for it to stop hurting her mother. Gamdal tries to call her name and Hira is annoyed that he's not doing enough. She yells at him to get the little girl while she's busy hacking off zombie heads. Gamdal says he's on his way but gets attacked by one of the zombies. He blocks its claws using a metal rod and screams for Chukbok to wait at the same time. He yells her name one more time, but the child continues to charge at the dungeon master with tears staining her eyes. She then screams with all her might, calling for her mother. Meanwhile, the half-monster is still in her head, visualizing herself to be pregnant with Chukbok. Her mind keeps telling her how dangerous things are, and she concludes that she must get rid of her tentacles. She then pulls on them, bearing the pain as she yells for them to get off of her. She continues to squirm and cry until they finally come off, leaving a trail of blood in their wake. The tentacles fall to the ground, and so does she as she acknowledges that she finally did it. She breathes heavily, but is calm because she feels okay now. All that's left is one thing. Unfortunately, she doesn't get to think about it before she notices that the tentacles have become a hand. This freaks her out, and she wearily watches as the hand crawls towards her. She's still catching her breath when it jumps at her, and in a panic, she screams for it to stop. The woman shields her head with both arms and yells at the hand to stop once again. The illusion blends with reality at this point, and she hears Chukbok telling the dungeon master to stop hurting her mother. This is all the motivation she needs. Immediately, she realizes it's her daughter's voice. She struggles to lift herself off the ground. She sees the little girl threatening to beat up the monster if he punches her mother again. Chukbok looks so small before the beast, but it doesn't stop her. She's trembling and crying, but it doesn't stop her. All her mother can think about is a way to get the little girl to run, and she weakly sits upright. Gamdal is busy fighting off the lesser zombies, but calls Chukbok's name yet again. Unlike Hira, who's irritated by the whole thing. The half-monster admits to herself that she can't move because of the impact, but has to find a way if she wants to protect her daughter. The dungeon master towers over the little girl with its 3 eyes glowing bright red. He calls her Chukbok and confesses that he has a question for her. He asks the girl what she is, wanting to know if she is a monster or a human. Chukbok just does everything in her power to hold back her tears, pointing her mutating finger towards the beast. He finds this interesting and asks her where she got a part of his body from. Chukbok screams at the top of her lungs that she has no idea. All she wants is for the monster to stop hitting her mother. The woman wonders what her daughter is thinking, but cannot tell her to stop since she cannot speak. This leaves the dungeon master wondering if he can even have a proper conversation with a child this young. He dismisses the thought, finding comfort in the fact that he found something here. His huge hand casts a shadow on Chukbok and her mother as he brings it down on them. He simply plans to know more by opening up both of them. Gamdal screams, and so does Hira, who abandons the zombies she's up against and runs towards the little girl. Her mother wants her to run because of how dangerous it is, but the only word that comes out of her mouth is go. Chukbok doesn't listen and clings to her mother. She continues telling the girl to go, but she declares that she won't abandon her mother and will protect her. This touches the half-monster, and she calls herself pathetic for giving up when her daughter hasn't. She then clenches her fist, pumping up herself as she admits that Chukbok is stronger than her. Her bones crack with each move she makes, but she doesn't stop because she needs to protect her family. She manages to hug Chukbok before the hand comes down, thus shielding her from a direct blow. The hand crushes them, and all Gamdal and Hira can do is gasp in shock. The dungeon master lets an evil smile fly as he declares that he has gotten his payback. His smile ceases when he hears a sizzling sound, and upon closer observation, he notices that a part of his hand had disintegrated. Before he can process what's happening, he feels a slash on his back, followed by multiple attacks everywhere on his body. They move so fast that he can barely block any of them. He just stands there taking them all and asking himself if she awakened in such a dire situation. The half-monster slides out of range as the dungeon master sizzles and droops from all her poisonous attacks. Gamdal stands in awe of how she got the monster's flesh to melt and asks what on earth could be happening. Chukbok is all smiles now, hiding safely behind her mother and happily yelling that she got one more whip. True to the girl's words, the half-monster now has 2 sizzling tentacles coming out the back of her head. The monster, in its weak state, still finds this woman interesting, so much so that he tells her to give it her best. In other news, the zombies that had run from the dungeon master scream and screech that they want to get out. All this time, a little zombie boy with such weird hands keeps crying for someone to play with him. Back to the dungeon master. He's pissed off that the half-monster dared to ruin his precious new body and admits that he underestimated her. She remains unfazed, and he confesses that he tried to be merciful but has changed his mind because she crossed the line. His body begins to slowly regenerate, and he stretches out his huge hands towards their direction. Gamdal yells, trying to warn the rest that the hands are coming, but they just pass over them and begin to pick up the corpses of slain zombies. Gamdal then asks why it's doing that, and the monster opens its mouth. It begins to chew up the corpses and weird out Chukbok and the others in the process. As usual, Gamdal is the only one who voices his concern about what is happening. They watch as the dungeon master increases in size and continues to do so until a whole other giant creature forms beneath him. Its legs has hands, and its eyes glow crimson. Chukbok is pushed to confess how humongous this beast is. Gamdal claims that they're doomed and drops his weapons to the ground. He begins to wonder how they can fight against it, seeing as it looks impossible to kill or even run from. He continues to think about what they can do and stares at the ground hopelessly. The woman hands Chukbok to him, but he just asks what the little girl wants. She clings to Gamdal while her mother growls. He interprets it as her wanting to fight against the beast, so he discourages her from doing it. She seems to have made up her mind, so Gamdal continues to discourage her, claiming that there must be a way for all of them to escape together. He begins to tremble and begs her not to go because she might not make it back alive. She clasps her hands against his cheeks and does her best to speak as she tells him to trust her. She tells him to wait for her and promises to be back soon. Gamdal clenches his fist and breaks into an apology for being a weak husband. In turn, he promises to protect Chukbok with his life and tells her not to worry because she's a great mother. He then forces a smile and tells her to go kick the monsters, but Chukbok also encourages her mother to go get the beast. The half-monster bares all her teeth in a smile and heads towards a beast 10 times her size. She barely has time to gather her bearings when the beast strikes her. This causes Hira and Gamdal to wear surprising looks as the force from the monster's punch is enough to send them flying too. Gamdal shields his daughter just as promised, but the monster bellows that he doesn't understand why anyone would risk their lives to protect their family. He announces that he also has a family, but finds Chukbok's mom to be making an odd sacrifice. In his eyes, he's the parent, so his children should obey him to repay his kindness he showed by raising them. He then smiles and declares that that's the definition of a real family. Apparently, the half-monster disagrees with him. She had been fast enough to dodge the punch and is now infuriated because the dungeon master treated his kids like they were slaves. She thinks he doesn't deserve to be called a parent, so she sends her sizzling tentacles to attack him. He easily manipulates a part of his body to block the attack, and as it droops, he declares how annoying he finds this woman. He then slams her with his fist, but instead of flying off, she digs her poisonous claws into his flesh. She also uses her tentacles for backup and launches multiple attacks on the dungeon master, yelling at him to die. Unfortunately, he traps her leg by manipulating a part of his skin and then grabs her with his good arm. He calls her a brat for ruining the other one and begins to squeeze just to hear her scream. He promises to squeeze all her bones and organs, and he makes good on his promise quite slowly. All the woman can do is yell in pain as her bones crack. It's now obvious to her that she'll lose consciousness soon. All of a sudden, the beast loses balance and wobbles on its feet, leaving him no choice but to unhand Chuck Bok's mom. He wonders what could have caused it, and by the time he looks down, he realizes that a part of his leg has been cut off. Hee-Ra yells at the half-monster as she falls to the ground, telling her to wake up. She then promises to buy her some time to get rid of the monster. Hee-Ra doesn't get a response, so she yells again, telling the woman to freaking move. She resolves to do that if only Hee-Ra would stop nagging. It becomes a tag team match as both ladies attack the monster together. Gomdal watches from the sidelines and admits that they're both amazing fighters. He tells Chuck Bok to duck, and she promises that her mother and Hee-Ra will win the fight for sure. Gomdal just says that he believes in them as well. The little boy with weird hands arrives at the scene, still looking for someone to play with him. From amidst the dust, Gomdal and Chuck Bok see him as a shadow, and when the dust clears, Chuck Bok recognizes him and screams. This stops the boy in his tracks as he shoots the little girl a questioning look. Chuck Bok's mother keeps hacking away at the dungeon master, chanting to herself that she must protect her daughter even if she risks her life. She continues slashing at him with the singular plan to get her family out of there. Hee-Ra, on the other hand, keeps cutting down the beast, but wonders if she should just abandon the other two and make a run for it with Chuck Bok. There's one thing that both ladies agree on though, and that's to kill the dungeon master and get out of there. The beast takes his next step with so much force that it breaks the concrete. He then stretches his hands, lets out his slithering tongue, and roars like the menace he is. He calls them meaningless creatures and promises that they will all die because of their worthless decisions. Meanwhile, the little zombie boy just stares at Chuck Bok and Gomdal, who exclaims that he's just a kid. He then asks about what is smelling, but Chuck Bok interrupts his question as she reports the zombie boy for bothering her previously. Gomdal doesn't understand, so the little girl explains that the zombie can stretch his little arms and had hit her with them. Gomdal then tells her to leave it to him, but soon realizes that the little zombie seems very angry. In truth, the boy relives all the ways Chuck Bok messed with him in the past, and this infuriates him. She even glares at him and mocks him some more. The little zombie yells his catchphrase and begins to run towards Gomdal. He stops again when Chuck Bok tells him to go away. Even when Gomdal says it, the boy repeats that he wants them to play with him. This confuses the man some more. He realizes that the little zombie is much weaker than he thought. The weird part is that zombies usually run away when they sense danger, but this one came to the center of it. Its attention gets pulled to the dungeon master, and he watches with keen interest as he growls and sends Hee-Ra crashing into the wall. He mumbles some words, but Gomdal doesn't hear it, so he asks what the boy said. Unfortunately, he's too engrossed with Hee-Ra hitting the wall to reply. Chuck Bok's mother coughs and breathes heavily as she finds herself back in the grip of the dungeon master. He looks down on her and declares that reality demands that no matter what she has given up for her family or how much new power she unlocks, none of it makes a difference. He tells her that all she has left is despair and wonders aloud about how she could stay so stubborn. A low growl escapes her lips as she stares at him. It's obvious to the beast that she hasn't given up. He opens his mouth wide and proceeds to swallow the half-monster. Luckily, Gomdal intervenes and calls the beast's attention. Him, Hira, and the woman all look in Gomdal's direction at the same time as he threatens the dungeon master. He tells him to get his hands off his wife, or he will make sure his child faces grave danger. He says this while lifting the little zombie boy like Mufasa did Simba. Chuck-Bak hides behind his leg, but yells at the beast to let her mother go. The monster quips that the little zombie must be his host's child and wonders what Gomdal is going to do with it. Meanwhile, Chuck-Bak's mom tells him to leave. Gomdal doesn't listen to her. Instead, he tells the monster that the kid has become a hostage. He then requests that his wife gets released that instant. The monster stares down at him, asking if he's trying to arouse his sympathy. He then declares that it's a wasted effort. Gomdal grits his teeth and watches as the monster continues his speech about not caring. Anyway, his body betrays him. Gomdal capitalizes on this and yells that the beast won't mind if he hurts the boy then. The little zombie continues to cry as he calls the monster his mommy and asks him to play. He begins to lose control of his host body because of this, and his hand begins to tremble. The more this kid cries, the more memories of the host flood into the dungeon master's mind. He remembers holding the boy's hand, feeding him, and even patting his cheeks. He has no idea when tears fall from his eyes, and he admits that the little zombie boy is his baby, well, the baby of his current vessel. The whole vessel begins to tremble as the dungeon master loses control of it. He questions the trivial emotion that's causing it and begins to cough soon enough. He admits that his vessel is agitated by the little zombie and wonders if it's because of maternal instinct. As a way out, the monster resolves to take his body back from Chuck-Bak's mother, but he's much too late. She's already in the air, and as she's coming down for an attack, the monster tries to object. Luckily, Hira throws her axe with enough force to cut off the hand of this beast and stops it from defending itself. Using this window, the half-monster slashes the lump embedded in the chest of the dungeon master. After such a wonderful feat, Gomdal yells that she finally did it, and Hira just watches with her blood-stained face. On the other hand, Chuck-Bak cheers on her mother, calling her the best for cutting off the intruder from the dungeon master. All that's left is for her to kill him, but as she tries to dig her claws into him, he stabs her hand. She quickly withdraws it in pain, wondering what just happened as blood spills out of it. She realizes that the monster had stabbed her with its tentacle, and the hand had begun to tremble. The face of this beast looks like it's smirking, and this makes the woman more angry. She employs her right hand to attack it this time, but before she can reach it, Daeyeon pops out of nowhere and takes a swing at her. Luckily, she's fast enough to dodge it. Daeyeon then safeguards her father's core between her palms, leaving the woman to wonder how it can still be alive. Just then, she begins to feel excruciating pain running through her tentacles despite her resolve to continue fighting. She wonders why the pain chose now of all times, and she watches Daeyeon dash off with her father's core in hand. She tries reaching for the girl, but it's a pointless attempt. The dungeon master begins to fall since there's no one to control her anymore, and Gomdal alongside his daughter yell at the half-monster to dodge. Weak and in pain, she only lets out a low growl. She watches as the humongous beast crashes into the ground and raises so much dust that Gomdal and Chuck-Bak think something bad has happened to her. They call out both her and Hira's names, and the latter is the first to be found. She asks if Chuck-Bak is okay, and the little girl rushes to hug her leg. Gomdal tells her that she did a good job and proceeds to ask where Chuck-Bak's mom is. Hira points out that she's right in front of them, and true to her words, they see the shadow of the half-monster amidst all the dust. She just stands by the body of the host, watching as she breathes heavily. She then admits that she may have missed the intruder, but the fight is finally over. Before her eyes, the dungeon master coughs, and this gives her the idea to get rid of it to make it easier for them to get supplies. She acknowledges that it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and pulls out her sizzling claws to kill it. She gets stopped by the little zombie boy who grabs her hand and says he wants to play with his mother. The host calls him her baby and reaches out to him. They all watch painfully as the boy bursts into uncontrollable tears. This doesn't stop Chuckbok's mom though. She can't shake off the pity she feels for him and stabs the host with her tentacle, injecting her with enough poison to help her life. The little boy doesn't know this, so he cries some more and begins to punch the woman's legs. Chuckbok also concludes that her mom killed the host, but her father tells her that she's only trying to help. She shoots him a questioning look and then turns her gaze to her mother, retracting her tentacle from the dungeon master. She shouts at the little boy, wanting him to stop punching her because it actually hurts. His tears begin to reduce as he catches a glimpse of his mother. The host then sits up and calls him her baby. The zombie boy bursts into tears anew, but this time it's tears of joy. He stretches his arms as he runs towards his mother. She in turn opens her arms wide to accept his embrace. They both then share an emotional moment that makes Chuckbok's mom realize that they're no different from her and her daughter. She realizes that the dungeon master may be a terrifying monster, but she's also a mother who loves her child just like she loves Chuckbok. She gains satisfaction because she now feels like she did the right thing. Chuckbok yells her name, thus interrupting her thought process. She turns to see her daughter running into her arms. They too embrace each other, despite Chuckbok startling her. The little girl tells her mother that they should head home, and she couldn't agree more. They all turn to leave, and the first thing Gomdal says is that both ladies should get treatment as soon as possible. Hee-Ra just tells him to leave her alone. As they leave, Chuckbok waves at the zombie boy, and he waves back, still clinging to his mother. Meanwhile, Dayon asks her father if he will be fine since he didn't absorb the dungeon master. He claims that he's fine and that he already drained other zombies of enough nutrients. She then asks him what the plan is, only for him to reveal that they must chase down Chuckbok and her mother. By now, Dayon's father already morphed into more than a core. He had become a somewhat whole monster again. His daughter asks how he plans to track down the half-monster and her daughter, and he tells her not to worry about that. Apparently, he has a way of tracking them down. He had left a piece of himself inside her hand when he stabbed her and tells his daughter that all he has to do now is get his body back so that he'll be complete. Seeing as he no longer has to depend on absorbing powers from others, he instructs Dayon to tell all her siblings of the cannibal tribe to bring him Chuckbok and her mother. Zombies are littered everywhere outside, so Gomdal and the others have to sneak past them. Unfortunately, some of Hee-Ra's blood drips to the ground and they smell it. This draws their attention and they follow the scent of the blood. An unknowing Hee-Ra continues to bleed a trail behind herself. Gomdal and his immediate family finally reach their home, and he kneels by the doorstep in relief. Even his wife goes on her knees too, breathing heavily. This makes Chuckbok wonder if her parents are okay. Gomdal claims that he isn't and throws the question back at the other two. Chuckbok raises both her hands as she happily declares that she's totally fine. Her mother then claims that she is too. Just then, it dawns on Gomdal that Hee-Ra isn't with them. He asks the other two if they saw her, seeing as she was right behind them. Unfortunately, the hunter had fainted in the hallway of their building. Later on, Chuckbok sings a healing song for Hee-Ra, telling all her pain to go away. The hunter regains consciousness, and the first thing she sees are Chuckbok's incomplete teeth, alongside a worried expression. She calls the little girl So-Ah, and Chuckbok asks who that is. She begins to cry, thinking that Hee-Ra no longer knows who she is. She screams Hee-Ra's name, hitting her and telling her not to forget her or get hurt. The hunter's sense of humor isn't lost, as she tells the little girl that it's too late for that. Chuckbok says she wants her friend to get better, so Hee-Ra suggests that she start by getting off of her. She sits upright and asks where she is, but Chuckbok has already created a snot trail from Hee-Ra's blanket to her nose. She then reveals that they're in her home and that her parents helped her because she passed out. From the dormouth, Gomdal asks if she's awake, adding that his daughter was extremely worried about her. He then suggests that they have some food, seeing as he made something delicious. Chukbok is excited and tells Hira to eat with her. The hunter is hesitant, but eventually gives in. Gomdal had boiled some ramen and tears fall from his eyes as he slurps it up. Chukbok, on the other hand, is seated on her mother's lap, sweating her ass off as she digs into her meal. She declares that she loves ramen and admits to never eating such a thing before. Gomdal cheerily tells her to help herself since it's something they can no longer have every day. Hira hasn't touched her meal the entire time. She's more worried about the bunny top she's now wearing and wonders what happened to her clothes. Chukbok is quick to tell her that they washed her clothes and that the ones she's putting on are for her mother. Hira calls it childish and it pisses off the half-monster. Chukbok agrees with her though. Gomdal continues to nibble on his food but can't help but notice how muscular Hira is. He watches her give Chukbok a part of her meal, but that's by the wayside. Hira had too many injuries for him to think that she was an ordinary person. He then concludes that it must be the reason why she's so strong. Chukbok thanks everyone for the meal, and her father confirms if she's full. She says she is and proceeds to tug on Hira's arm, asking her to play with her when she's done eating. She wants to play hide and seek, freeze tag, and the likes, but Hira refuses. All the hunter can notice is Chukbok's mutating finger. The little girl tries to suggest another game, but her father intervenes and promises that he and Hira will play with her when they finish their meal. After Chukbok celebrates, he tells her to go to her room and count to 100. He sends her on her way, and the girl happily runs to her room to audibly count. The first thing Hira mentions is Chukbok's finger being shorter. She asks if they clipped the nail and Gomdal admits that they found it that way the next day. He adds that they'll figure out what it is when they get to the village and that the cannibal tribe may be after his wife and daughter as they make their way there. It's quite sad that their safety can't be guaranteed even if they get to the village. Gomdal then fetches another bowl of ramen as he asks Hira for a favor. He admits that he wants her to follow them to Hope Village and hands her the fresh bowl of ramen. She listens to him promise to compensate her to the best of their ability. He also admits that he wants her to protect him and his daughter until they return from the village. He smiles at Hira, asking what she thinks about his proposal. She calmly drops her empty bowl of ramen before confirming if he wants her to protect them rather than let his wife do it. She then accepts the second bowl of food and agrees to protect them. A smirk comes to her lips as she asks if that was the response Gomdal was expecting. She tells him not to deceive himself by thinking that they're comrades because of what happened in the dungeon. Hira then reminds him that she doesn't care if he gets killed or not. She asks why she would help him and declares that the only person she will protect on the journey is Chukbok. While the little girl is counting to 83, Hira is outside telling her father that he'll handle every other thing. Gomdal agrees to her terms, stating that he will look after himself. This surprises his wife, who thinks that he can't possibly do it all alone. He tells her not to worry because he has no problem taking care of himself. She then turns to face Hira, mouthing that she's a stubborn woman. She wonders why the hunter is so obsessed with her daughter if she has her own. Before she can complete that thought, Chukbok comes out yelling. She declares that they're all mean because no one came to get her. Gomdal is surprised and asks if she already counted to 100. She's still angry, so she tells him that lying is a bad thing. Her father doesn't fight her on this. Instead, he begs her forgiveness. It doesn't soothe her, so she draws closer to Hira, who pokes her cheek fondly. The little girl lightens up and tells them that she'll only play with Hira. The hunter doesn't have a problem with that, but Chukbok's mother does. She grabs her daughter's arm and pulls her to herself. Hira then grabs the other arm and pulls Chukbok to her. Both ladies end up in a staring contest as they hold one of Chukbok's arms each. She asks the half-monster what her problem is, and she quips that Chukbok is her daughter. This doesn't sway Hira at all. She growls, but thinks to herself that the hunter should find someone else if she wants to be a mother. She doesn't like Hee-ra one bit, so the glaring contest continues as poor Chuk-bok stares up at both women. Gom-dal seems unbothered as he slurps his ramen. All he can think about is how grateful he is that Hee-ra will be traveling with them. Meanwhile, Chuk-bok asks her mother if she wants to play with them, but she just growls. Gom-dal then concludes that all they need is a vehicle that will take them to the village and decides to think more about it when they're done eating. Three men are busy chasing a young lady, yelling and asking if she wants to get killed. She runs for her life with a crowbar in one hand and a bunch of papers in the other. She then takes a detour to her left, and the men laugh at her foolish decision. She soon discovers that she had entered a restroom. One of the men joins her inside and tells her to come over to where they are if she doesn't want her head smashed in. She grips the crowbar tighter, turns around, and throws the papers to the ground. In other news, Gom-dal and Hee-ra go from car to car in an attempt to find one that works. They come up empty, and Gom-dal complains that they've tried about 20 vehicles now. Downcast, he asks Hee-ra what to do, seeing as they've checked every vehicle in the area. He seems to think that they will encounter other survivors if they move further, and Hee-ra immediately buys into the idea. Gom-dal wasn't expecting her to, so he brings up how dangerous it is and the fact that she's not totally healed yet. Hee-ra doesn't care. Instead, she asks if he plans to do nothing while Chuk-bok is sick. This shuts Gom-dal up and makes him offer to lead the way. He tells her to stay behind him because of her condition, but Hee-ra interprets it as him looking down on her. She walks up to him and kicks him in the foot, making Gom-dal ask what her problem is. She tells him not to overrate himself and make sure that he stays behind her. Gom-dal would have preferred if she just said that rather than kick him.
If you like this video, please subscribe, leave a like and comment.